The Beast of Hollow Mountain wasn't just the first film to pit cowboys against dinosaurs. It was a betrayal wrapped in deception, marketed with lies, and animated by men who'd stolen another man's dream. While audiences in 1956 watched Guy Madison, television's Wild Bill Hickok, lasso a Tyrannosaurus Rex in glorious cinemascope, behind the scenes lurked a darker story. A legendary effects master promised work and then systematically shut out of his own creation, producers inventing fake technology to deceive audiences, and animation so inconsistent that the dinosaur's appearance changed from scene to scene. This is the story of Hollywood's first cowboys versus dinosaur spectacle, and the brutal reality of how dreams get hijacked. Here are 12 weird facts about the Beast of Hollow Mountain that reveal what happens when innovation meets exploitation. And stick around for the bonus fact, because 13 years later, the same story would be filmed again, this time by the protege of the man who'd been betrayed, creating a masterpiece from the ashes of broken promises. Let's ride into the wreckage. Number 12. Willis O'Brien was promised the animation job, then systematically shut out of his own story. The Beast of Hollow Mountain begins with betrayal. Willis O'Brien, the visual effects legend behind King Kong and the Lost World, had spent years developing a screenplay called Valley of the Mists about cowboys discovering dinosaurs. In 1941, he approached Edward Nassour, who'd known O'Brien since Nassour was a teenager. Nassour bought the story rights inexpensively and made O'Brien a promise. He'd hire him as animator when production began. O'Brien believed him. He'd spent nearly 20 years trying to get this project made, and finally someone wanted it. Then production started. O'Brien found his story had been significantly altered without consultation. Worse, he discovered he'd been completely shut out of the studio. The Nassour brothers had decided O'Brien's work was too expensive and time-consuming and gave the animation job to themselves and a team of budget specialists. O'Brien received a co-writing credit for his original idea and nothing else. No animation work, no consultation, no involvement. The man who pioneered stop-motion animation, who created King Kong, was erased from his own project by producers who'd promised him everything and delivered humiliation. Number 11. The revolutionary Regiscope process was completely fake. It never actually worked. The film's marketing promised audiences a technological breakthrough. The Regiscope process, described as feeding actuating impulses via computer to a mechanical figure, thus bringing it to life for the camera. Theatrical trailers boasted about this revolutionary animation technique that would change filmmaking forever. It was complete fiction. According to Edward Nassour's own son Ed, his father did work on developing such a system, essentially an early attempt at computer-controlled puppetry where animators could record movements and play them back repeatedly while refining them. But Nassour never got it working. The entire Regiscope marketing campaign was, in film historian Roy Kennard's words, a brazen attempt by the producer to deceive a gullible public. The actual animation used traditional replacement animation, swapping nearly identical models between frames, and conventional stop motion with armatures. Nothing revolutionary, nothing computer-controlled. Just Edward Nassour's ego-inflating standard techniques into invented technology. The press materials submitted for Academy Award consideration described turntables and strobe lights, real equipment used for the actual effects, but the promised computer-controlled breakthrough was pure marketing deception. Regiscope never existed except as a lie. Number 10. This was the first film in history to show cowboys fighting dinosaurs. Before Cowboys and Aliens, before Jurassic Park's raptors stalking through kitchens, there was The Beast of Hollow Mountain, cinema's first attempt to combine the Western and monster movie genres into a single narrative. The concept seems obvious now, almost inevitable. American cowboys exist in pop culture as the ultimate frontiersmen, and what greater frontier challenge than prehistoric predators? But in 1956, this was genuinely novel territory. Science fiction and westerns had remained separate domains, each with distinct audiences and conventions. Willis O'Brien's original concept married them decades before anyone else attempted it. The film established every trope that would follow. Cattle mysteriously disappearing, locals warning of cursed territories, a climactic showdown between six-shooter technology and primordial fury. The execution might have been flawed, but the innovation was real. This was the genesis of an entire subgenre, the first time audiences saw Stetsons and saddles confronting teeth and claws from the Mesozoic era. Every subsequent Cowboys vs. Monsters film, from the Valley of Gwangi to direct-to-video schlock, owes its existence to this 1956 experiment that proved the concept could work, even if this particular version struggled to deliver on its promise. Number 9. The star was Guy Madison, television's wildly popular Wild Bill Hickok. Guy Madison wasn't just any Western actor. He was one of the most recognizable faces in 1950s America. From 1951 to 1958, he starred as Wild Bill Hickok in The Adventures of Wild Bill Hickok, one of television's most successful Western series. His square-jawed, heroic portrayal of the legendary lawman made him a household name, his face appearing on breakfast cereals, bubblegum cards, and toys. Madison was one of television's first beneficiaries of mass media saturation, a Western icon for the baby boom generation. During the show's run, 16 feature films were released by Monogram Pictures, essentially television episodes combined into continuous stories, keeping Madison constantly visible in both theaters and living rooms. When The Beast of Hollow Mountain began production in January 1955, Madison was at peak fame, filming Wild Bill Hickok episodes while squeezing in theatrical roles during downtime. Casting him was calculated. Audiences who trusted him to uphold law and order weekly would follow him into a Mexican swamp to fight a dinosaur. The strategy worked commercially, even if the film didn't. Madison's name recognition guaranteed theatrical bookings and drew his television fan base into theaters, proving that television stardom could translate to big-screen B-movies even when the material was questionable. Number 8. The film was shot entirely on location in Mexico from January to March 1955. The Beast of Hollow Mountain was a genuine United States-Mexican co-production between Dinosaur Productions and Películas Rodriguez S.A., filmed at Churubusco Studios in Mexico City with extensive location shooting in the mountains near Cuernavaca and Tepoztlan. This wasn't Hollywood backlot fakery. The production transported cast, crew, and equipment to actual Mexican locations for months of filming. Directors Edward Nasur and Ismael Rodriguez, who co-directed, shot both English and Spanish language versions simultaneously, requiring bilingual coordination and duplicate performances. The Mexican landscapes provided authentic atmosphere, mountain ranges, rural villages, genuine period architecture. Cinematographer Jorge Stahl Jr., one of the most distinguished directors of photography during Mexico's golden age of cinema, captured the locations in stunning cinemascope and technicolor, making the film visually impressive, even when the story faltered. The extended Mexican shoot from mid-January through late March 1955 was logistically complex and expensive, involving Mexican and American crew members working together under challenging conditions. The location photography remains the film's strongest element, providing genuine production value that elevates the material. That authenticity makes the eventual appearance of the poorly animated dinosaur even more jarring. Audiences spend an hour immersed in real locations before being pulled into unconvincing fantasy. Number 7. The film was the first to combine cinemascope, color, and stop-motion dinosaurs. The Beast of Hollow Mountain holds a legitimate place in cinema history as the first feature film to combine anamorphic cinemascope widescreen, technicolor photography, and stop-motion dinosaur animation. Previous dinosaur films like The Lost World, 1925, and King Kong, 1933, were black and white with smaller aspect ratios. The technical ambition was genuine. Shooting stop-motion animation in widescreen format with color film stock created significant challenges. The wider frame meant more background detail to composite, and color film required more precise lighting and exposure control. Each frame of animation had to account for the expanded canvas, making errors more visible. The dinosaur effects team, Jack Rabin, Louis DeWitt, and Henry Lyon, working under Edward Nasur's supervision, were essentially pioneering techniques without established protocols. While Ray Harryhausen would later perfect color widescreen stop motion in films like The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, The Beast of Hollow Mountain was genuinely breaking technical ground. The film's visual ambition exceeded its execution, but that ambition mattered. It demonstrated that monster movies could be spectacular widescreen events, not just small-format B pictures. The decision to shoot in CinemaScope and Technicolor signaled that dinosaur films deserved prestige treatment, even if this particular dinosaur looked ridiculous once it finally appeared. Number 6. The dinosaur doesn't appear until the last 20 minutes of an 81-minute film. The Beast of Hollow Mountain commits the cardinal sin of monster movies, withholding the monster. For the first 60 minutes of an 81-minute film, audiences endure a conventional western about cattle ranchers feuding over land and a woman. American cowboy Jimmy Ryan bickers with rival Enrique Rios over Sarita's affections while cattle mysteriously disappear near Hollow Mountain. There's a lengthy Mexican wedding festival sequence with fireworks and dancing. There's romantic tension. There's a subplot about an alcoholic ranch hand and his son. What there isn't for an excruciating hour is any dinosaur. Children dragged to theaters expecting cowboys versus dinosaurs action, squirm through endless soap opera plotting while waiting for the promised beast. When the creature finally appears around the 60-minute mark, its entrance is jarringly abrupt, as if the filmmakers suddenly remembered they'd sold tickets to a monster movie. The pacing reflects production reality. They'd essentially made a low-budget western and then grafted dinosaur footage onto the ending as an afterthought. The strategy might have worked if the western material had been compelling, but it's aggressively mediocre, meaning audiences had to survive an hour of boredom before reaching 20 minutes of admittedly entertaining but technically flawed monster action. Number 5. The dinosaur's ridiculously long red tongue became infamously comical. The film's dinosaur, identified variously as Tyrannosaurus rex or Allosaurus, features one element that every review, every retrospective, every discussion inevitably mentions: its absurdly long, wiggling red tongue. The tongue extends far beyond any realistic proportion, flickering in and out like a cartoon lizard's, cartoonishly serpentine and utterly destroying any attempt at menace. It looks, in multiple reviewers' descriptions, like a long red tentacle or a ridiculous rubber appendage. The decision to include this exaggerated tongue feature mystifies paleontology and common sense alike. Theropod dinosaurs didn't have elongated tongues. Their tongue structure was rigid and attached to the floor of their mouths, incapable of the lizard-like protrusion depicted here. But, scientific accuracy aside, the tongue simply looks silly, transforming potential terror into unintentional comedy. Children might have loved it, one reviewer noted. Both of my kids loved it. Kids know fun when they see it. But for anyone seeking genuine thrills, the tongue demolished suspension of disbelief. It's the element that survives in collective memory, the detail that defines the film's failed effects. That ridiculous red tongue became shorthand for the Beast of Hollow Mountain's technical inadequacy, proof that good intentions and pioneering ambition couldn't overcome fundamental execution failures. Number 4. The animation inconsistency was so severe that multiple dinosaurs seemed to appear. Careful viewers notice something disturbing about the Beast of Hollow Mountain's dinosaur. It doesn't look consistent from scene to scene. Some sequences show relatively smooth, fluid movement, particularly running shots where replacement animation, swapping multiple nearly identical models, creates convincing locomotion. Other sequences show jerky, stuttering motion characteristic of crude stop-motion work. The dinosaur's physical appearance, size, proportions, even color seems to shift between scenes. Multiple reviewers have observed that there may be more than one dinosaur which do not quite match each other. This inconsistency stems from the production's patchwork approach. The Dinosaur brothers had purchased some test footage Willis O'Brien had created, which they incorporated alongside their own newly created animation. Different animators working with different models and techniques produced footage that never quite cohered into a single believable creature. The replacement animation stands out as distinctly different from conventional stop motion, creating a visual discord that fragments the dinosaur's screen presence. Instead of one terrifying predator, audiences perceive multiple creatures of varying quality awkwardly edited together. The technical mishmash reflects the production's opportunistic nature, cobbling together whatever worked from O'Brien's abandoned project alongside cheaply made new footage, hoping audiences wouldn't notice the seams they noticed. Number 3. The dinosaur was filmed just 3 inches from the camera. According to studio production materials submitted for Academy Award consideration, the Tyrannosaurus rex model was shot extraordinarily close to the camera, just 3 inches away. This proximity created both opportunities and problems. Shooting that close allowed for maximum detail and presence in the frame, making a relatively small model appear massive and imposing when properly lit and composited. The close-up approach meant every surface texture, every painted detail registered on film, providing visual richness impossible from greater distances. However, that proximity also meant any imperfection became glaringly obvious. At 3 inches, focus depth becomes razor thin. The slightest error in alignment or lighting creates obvious artificiality. Camera shake, model imperfections, and animation stutters all magnify when shooting this close. The technique required absolute precision from animators, cinematographers, and compositors working in concert. The Beast of Hollow Mountain's team achieved mixed results. Some shots genuinely impress with their sense of scale and physicality, while others expose the limitations of their budget and experience. Shooting 3 inches from the camera was a bold technical choice that reflected genuine ambition to create a convincing creature. Number 2. The same story was filmed as the Valley of Gwangi in 1969 with Ray Harryhausen. Willis O'Brien's Valley of the Mists concept, cowboys discovering and capturing a dinosaur, finally received proper treatment 13 years later. Ray Harryhausen, O'Brien's protege and the man many consider stop-motion animation's greatest practitioner, inherited the project from his deceased mentor. O'Brien had died in November 1962, 6 years before the Valley of Gwangi was realized. In the mid-1960s, Harryhausen suggested reviving O'Brien's abandoned projects to producer Charles H. Schneer. They purchased the rights from O'Brien's widow and hired William Bass to rewrite the screenplay, relocating the story from the Grand Canyon to south of the Rio Grande and updating character dynamics. The result was everything. The Beast of Hollow Mountain should have been technically flawless stop-motion animation, compelling characters, dramatic pacing, and a dinosaur, now called Gwangi, that looked genuinely terrifying, despite being a model puppet. The famous rope lassoing sequence that had fascinated Harryhausen in O'Brien's original treatment was realized with stunning complexity, cowboys on horseback coordinating with an animated dinosaur, in ways the Beast of Hollow Mountain never approached. The Valley of Gwangi became the film O'Brien had envisioned decades earlier, proof that his concept was brilliant, it just needed the right hands to execute it. Number 1. Willis O'Brien had tried to make this film. Since the 1940s, RKO abandoned it. The tragedy of the Beast of Hollow Mountain begins decades earlier. In 1941, Willis O'Brien developed his Valley of the Mists concept and took it to RKO Pictures, the studio that had produced his King Kong triumph 8 years earlier. RKO President George J. Schaefer agreed to finance the project, providing O'Brien with a $552,000 budget, substantial money in 1941. O'Brien anticipated collaborating again with director Ernest B. Schoedsack, who'd helmed King Kong's live-action sequences. The legendary model maker Marcel Delgado sculpted several prototype Allosaurus figures for the creature now named Gwangi. Everything seemed positioned for another O'Brien masterpiece. Then disaster. Due to executive changes at RKO and wartime production constraints, the project was scrapped in 1942 before filming began. Nearly 20 years of development evaporated. O'Brien kept trying to revive the concept throughout the 1940s and 1950s, pitching it to various studios and producers. When Edward Nasur finally showed interest in 1941, O'Brien was desperate enough to sell the rights cheaply, believing any produced version was better than perpetual development hell. That desperation made him vulnerable to Nasur's betrayal. Bonus fact: the film's original Spanish version was shot simultaneously with different performances. The Beast of Hollow Mountain exists in 2 distinct versions: an English-language cut distributed in the United States, and a Spanish-language version, El Monstruo de la Montaña Hueca, released in Mexico on April 18, 1957. These weren't dubbed versions, they were separately performed productions shot simultaneously. Director Ismael Rodriguez oversaw the Spanish version, while Edward Nasur handled English-language scenes, requiring different takes with actors performing in their respective languages. This created fascinating production challenges. Lighting and camera setups remained identical, but performances, delivery, and even some plot emphasis shifted between versions to accommodate different cultural audiences. The Spanish version reportedly features slightly different character dynamics, adjusting the great white hero framing that dominates the English cut to better serve Mexican viewers. This simultaneous dual-language production was relatively rare in 1950s American cinema, more common in Mexican film industry practices. The 2 versions represent parallel realities of the same story, identical in structure but divergent in cultural emphasis and performance nuance. The Beast of Hollow Mountain premiered in 1956 as cinema's first cowboys versus dinosaurs spectacle, marketed with fake technology and broken promises. Critics dismissed it. Audiences tolerated it briefly before moving on. Willis O'Brien, the visionary who'd spent 20 years fighting to realize his concept, watched strangers butcher his dream while excluding him from its creation. The Nasur brothers had gambled that technical ambition and Guy Madison's television fame could overcome narrative weakness and animation inconsistency. They were wrong, but something survived. The concept itself, cowboys battling dinosaurs, proved so fundamentally appealing that it transcended this film's failures. 13 years later, Ray Harryhausen would prove O'Brien's vision was brilliant by creating The Valley of Gwangi, a film that delivered everything the Beast of Hollow Mountain promised but couldn't execute. And in the decades since, the cowboys versus monsters subgenre has proliferated, from schlocky direct-to-video productions to big-budget spectacles, all owing their existence to this flawed 1956 experiment. The Beast of Hollow Mountain stands as a cautionary tale about exploitation, about promises broken and dreams hijacked. Edward Nasur bought Willis O'Brien's vision cheaply, promised him participation, then systematically erased him while claiming credit for innovations that didn't exist. Yet somehow, through all that betrayal and technical failure, O'Brien's core concept survived. Cowboys could fight dinosaurs, the genres could merge, the frontier could extend into prehistoric terror. That idea, that one brilliant concept, was strong enough to overcome even this disaster's attempt to kill it. 68 years later, whenever cowboys face monsters on screen, they're standing on ground, the beast of Hollow Mountain charted, however clumsily. Willis O'Brien's vision lives, even if this particular version nearly strangled it.